Picture the USS Gerald R. Ford sitting in Norfolk Harbor, 1,106 feet long, 100,000 tons, 78 aircraft on her deck. From the pier, you can see the flight deck, the island, the aircraft. You can see everything that the ship is designed to show you. What you cannot see is the city underneath it. The Gerald R. Ford has 25 decks stacked inside that hull. She has her own hospital, her own post office, her own television station, her own fire department, her own jail. She carries enough food to feed 4,500 people for 90 days. She generates enough electricity to power a city of 100,000 people. And at the very bottom of those 25 decks, sealed behind steel doors and classified access protocols, are 2 nuclear reactors that have been running since 2013 and will not need refueling until sometime around 2050. Most people who have stood on a pier and looked at an aircraft carrier have no idea what is inside it. Today we are going to go in, deck by deck, from the flight deck at the top to the keel at the bottom, and find the parts that almost nobody talks about. By the end of this video, you will understand why a nuclear supercarrier is not a warship that happens to carry aircraft. It is a city that happens to be able to sink other cities. Stay with me because the first thing we find when we go below the flight deck is not what most people expect. Start at the top. The flight deck. The flight deck of the Gerald R. Ford is 4.5 acres of armored steel, roughly the size of 3 football fields placed end to end. From above, it looks flat and simple. It is neither. The deck surface is covered in a non-skid coating called Na7, a mixture of epoxy and aluminum oxide granules that gives aircraft tires traction on a surface that is constantly wet, covered in jet fuel, and vibrating from catapult launches. The non-skid is replaced every few years. The process requires grinding the entire flight deck surface back to bare steel and reapplying. The job takes hundreds of workers and several months. Below the surface of the deck, running the full length of the ship, are 4 electromagnetic catapults, the Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, or EMALS. Steam catapults, which powered carrier launches since World War II, applied maximum force at the moment of launch and then tapered off. EMALS applies precisely calibrated force across the entire launch stroke, reducing the stress on aircraft airframes by as much as 30%. This matters because repeated high-stress catapult launches shorten the operational life of every aircraft on the ship. EMALS extends it. Each EMALS catapult can accelerate a 100,000-pound aircraft from 0 to 165 miles per hour in 300 feet. The energy required to do that in 2 seconds comes from a flywheel, a rotating mass of steel spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute, storing kinetic energy between launches and releasing it in a controlled burst when the catapult fires. There are 4 of these flywheels, each weighing several tons, spinning continuously inside the hull below the flight deck. At the other end of the flight deck, 4 arresting wires cross the deck at intervals of 40 feet. Landing aircraft hook these wires and decelerate from 150 miles per hour to 0 in approximately 2 seconds. The advanced arresting gear system that replaces the Nimitz-class hydraulic system uses a water turbine, a large spinning drum of water that absorbs the energy of a landing aircraft more gently than the old hydraulic system, reducing stress on aircraft landing gear. The flight deck is not a flat surface with some wires on it. It is a precision engineering system for launching and recovering aircraft at the highest possible rate. In surge operations, the Gerald R. Ford can generate 270 combat launches in a single day, 25% more than the Nimitz class. Go 1 deck down. The hangar deck. The hangar deck is where the aircraft live when they are not on the flight deck. It is 684 feet long, 108 feet wide, and 25 feet tall. It is large enough to park 80 full-size aircraft, with room for maintenance crews to work around them at the same time. 3 aircraft elevators, each large enough to hold 2 FA-18 Super Hornets at the same time, move aircraft between the hangar deck and the flight deck in approximately 11 seconds. The hangar deck also contains something that most visitors to the ship never notice. Built into the bulkheads at intervals along the entire length of the hangar are the ship's firefighting systems, aqueous film forming foam dispensers called AFFF. They can flood the entire hangar deck with fire-suppressing foam in under 60 seconds. The system was designed specifically in response to the USS Forrestal fire of 1967, in which a flight deck fire killed 134 sailors because suppression systems were too slow. The hangar deck of the Gerald R. Ford can be saturated with foam faster than it takes most people to read this paragraph. If you're finding this as fascinating as I am, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps more people find this channel, because the next two levels are the ones the Navy almost never talks about publicly. Go deeper. Below the hangar deck, the ship becomes a different world. The next several decks contain what the Navy calls the city within the ship. It has a fully equipped hospital with operating rooms, intensive care units, dental offices, and a pharmacy. The Gerald R. Ford's medical department can perform complex surgery at sea and handle mass casualty events. She carries enough blood supplies, pharmaceuticals, and medical equipment to operate independently for months without resupply. There is a post office, zip code 09 for the Fleet Post Office specific to the ship, that processes thousands of pieces of mail per deployment. There is a television studio that produces the ship's internal broadcast, F, which airs news, sports, and entertainment to screens throughout the ship 24 hours a day. There is a jail, the brig, with holding cells for crew members who require detention. There is a chapel, there is a barbershop, there is a library. There are 3 separate gyms, because 4,500 people who cannot leave the ship for months at a time will, without physical outlets, begin to deteriorate in ways that affect readiness. The Navy learned this in the Nimitz era and built the Ford accordingly. There are 2,700 separate berthing compartments spread across multiple decks. The Gerald R. Ford's crew sleeps in smaller rooms than the Nimitz class. The design deliberately reduced the number of racks per compartment from the previous standard, giving sailors more privacy and better sleep quality. Sleep quality on a deployed carrier affects everything from flight deck safety to maintenance error rates. The Navy treats it as an operational parameter. Go to the bottom, the reactors. At the lowest levels of the hull, sealed behind multiple watertight compartments and accessible only to personnel with nuclear propulsion training and security clearance, are the 2 A1B nuclear reactors. Each A1B reactor generates 300 megawatts of thermal power, 3 times the electrical output of the Nimitz-class A4W reactors. Together, the 2 reactors produce 600 megawatts of electricity, enough to power a city of 100,000 people. This power runs the catapults, the radar systems, the propulsion, the city above it, and has enough margin remaining to power directed energy weapons, lasers, and railguns, which do not yet exist in deployable form, but the Ford was specifically designed to accommodate them. The A1B requires 50% fewer personnel to operate than the previous A4W reactors because its monitoring and control systems are largely automated. This reduces watchstanding personnel by 2/3 compared with Nimitz-class reactors. The sailors who once stood watch over reactor systems manually have been replaced by sensors and automated controls that do the same job continuously without fatigue. The reactors were fueled when the Gerald R. Ford was built. They will not need refueling for the operational life of the ship, approximately 25 years of active service. The fuel is not accessible during normal operations. The reactor compartments are sealed. The nuclear material inside them will remain inside them for the entire deployment life of the vessel. Here is the detail that most accounts of nuclear carriers skip entirely. The Gerald R. Ford does not carry nuclear weapons. Her reactors are nuclear. Her weapons, her aircraft, her missiles, her guns are conventional. The nuclear power plant exists not to make her more destructive, but to make her independent. A conventionally powered carrier needs a fuel ship nearby at all times. A nuclear carrier can go anywhere, stay as long as the mission requires, and never be constrained by a fuel schedule. The Ford can circle the globe without stopping. She can remain on station in a crisis zone for weeks without a logistics tail. Her independence is the weapon. The reactors are the engine of that independence. Here is what the Gerald R. Ford actually is. When you go below the flight deck and look at the record plainly, she is not primarily a weapons platform. She is a mobile sovereign territory, a piece of American infrastructure that can be repositioned anywhere on the ocean in 2 weeks. Every time the Ford appears off a coastline, she brings with her a hospital, a post office, a television station, a jail, a chapel, a nuclear power plant, and 270 combat aircraft sorties per day. She is the most complex machine the United States has ever built and put to sea. The 4.5 acres of flight deck that you can see from the pier is the least interesting part of her. The most interesting part is the 25 decks you cannot see and the 2 nuclear reactors at the bottom of them that have been running since 2013 and will still be running when everyone who commissioned her has retired. What surprised you most about what's inside the Ford? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. Thanks for watching. If you want to know what's hidden inside the most famous warships ever built, and to see the parts most accounts never show you, subscribe. New video every week, and the next one goes somewhere even the crew rarely gets to go.